Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this City of Adelaide Audit and Risk Committee meeting today. Please note that this Audit and Risk Committee meeting will be recorded and live streamed to the City of Adelaide website. This means that your presence at and any contribution you make to the meeting may be collected, used, disclosed or published by the Council, including transferring outside Australia. The City of Adelaide acknowledges the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains as the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. We acknowledge and honour their spiritual and cultural stewardship of this country and recognise their deep and enduring relationship with its lands, waters, the sky and all living things. We pay our respects to the Kaurna elders past and present and recognise the important role of emerging leaders in sustaining and strengthening culture. Apologies. So we have two new appointees to the Audit and Risk Committee, Sam Mill here, welcome, and also Russell Da Costa. Unfortunately, Russell is an apology today, but no doubt he'll attend once he's completed his leave. And also, I was confirmed as the presiding member of the City of Adelaide Audit and Risk Committee meeting as well. We have some minutes from the previous meeting. Did anyone have any comments about the minutes? If not, would someone like to move that they're an accurate record of the proceedings?
I think John's the only one that can.
John? And seconded? Okay. Councillor Giles. All those in favour? That's carried, thank you. All right, are there any declaration of conflicts of interest? No. There is a presiding member report, but that's in the, at 6.5, so we'll deal with that in the reports section. Also, we have some representatives from BDO here today, and they have maybe. All right, I was going to change the order of the reports, but as they're not here.
I think we can move to 6.3 while we're waiting for them if you like.
Yeah, okay. Well then, do we need to show of hands? Yeah. So, yeah, okay. So, as the BDO aren't here, we'll move to item 6.3, just to show of hands that everybody agrees to that change. Thank you. Okay, 6.3 is the long-term financial plan. Anthony, to you.
Thank you. Through the chair, this is an annual update to Council's long-term financial plan. It's following on from the review of assumptions and principles that was recently presented to the Audit and Risk Committee. There have been no significant or material changes to the long-term financial plan from last year or from those assumptions that we presented. This item or this iteration sees the 26-27 budget form the basis to which the assumptions are applied and which extrapolate for the 10-year plan. So that is the key change to the plan. Indexation and interest rates have also been updated to reflect the latest available information that we have from third parties. Of note, all KFIs, key financial indicators, are within target except for our cash flow from operations for 2 years, at about years 6 and 7, where we are funding some significant renewals. So that's the Adelaide Bridge and the Torrens Weir, which are significant renewals to be funded. Effectively, the City of Adelaide's financial sustainability is projected to be maintained over the next 10 years. You'll note that debt also, debt-related key financial indicators, they begin to reduce in the last 2 years of the LTFP after peaking around year 8. We also undertook some sensitivity testing, which showed that we showed a detrimental impact if revenue does not keep pace with our increasing costs. Goes without saying, I think, in terms of how that impacts our bottom line, but also we also showed the benefit of securing external funding for some of our significant renewals and how that also improves both our debt and our cash flow from operations, key financial indicators. But they are the key things of note, but happy then to take any questions that you may have.
Thanks, Anthony. Any questions on the report? Yes, John.
Thank you for that, Anthony, because it actually answered all my questions from before, so I appreciate that with the update. This is probably more a comment or a question, actually, just because of the timing of the report and because it's also very fresh. Just a reference to the regulations, I think it's still to 2011. I think it should be now 2026. Yeah, I thought it was, because it's only a couple of weeks old, but that's just a absolutely very minor matter. So, but thank you for the answers.
Other questions? No? So we received a briefing on this, I think was that at our last meeting?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's good to hear that it's in line with those. So this will then go to council and then out for public consultation, is that?
That's correct.
Yeah, and when is it, and it'll be adopted then after that? Or?
Yeah, we are seeking to present that to council in September or October.
Through the chairman.
So the consultation report will be presented in September, and the final long-term financial plan post-consultation will go to the October cycle of committee and council.
Great, thank you. All right. Oh, sorry, yes.
Could I ask if we could have a bit more help from the independent panel, because we get some rather adverse commentary about the debt, the surplus ratio, the liabilities, and I would just feel comfort if I thought that we did more, we actually discussed it a little more to give us some reassurance. I don't know about Janet, but...
Certainly. Did you want to ask some more questions, or?
Well, I just wanted to really know what you thought about the surplus ratio being so low in the out years, and the financial liabilities rising, and how sustainable it is, because this is the argument we always have in council. And I would feel reassured if those independent members of this committee actually helped us a little.
If I might, through the presiding member, if I might assist. My sense is that the Lord Mayor's seeking some reassurance from the committee that the key financial indicators are in the right range. And I'd refer you to page 31 of the long-term financial plan, page 73 in your deck, where the three key financial ratios, the operating surplus ratio, the net financial liabilities and the asset renewal funding ratio are reflected. My observation in relation to the operating surplus ratio is that we're leveraging off a satisfactory but low base in terms of the operating surplus ratio. That's a direct result of some provisions that have been made in the 26-27 budget, specifically about supporting the reopening of the revised central market operations, and that 1.8% is a little bit lower than what I, as the CEO, would like to see, but that is a reflection of the adopted budget. Importantly, we leverage up from that 1.8% to a more acceptable range in excess of 3% over the balance of the long-term financial plan, and I would suggest that that is an indication of ongoing operational sustainability based on the long-term financial plan forecast. Net financial liabilities is well below that 80% target range over the life of the plan, and that's reflected in a positive level of our prudential borrowing limit, which peaks in around about 2032-33, but then moves back down over the life of the plan with a 10-year average of 71%. So I think we're in an appropriate range there. Asset renewal funding is a matter that has been a key focus for the administration and the council over the last 3 years. We came off a relatively low base back in 2022, and we have underlying assumptions built into the long-term financial plan in terms of ensuring the level of asset renewal funding is appropriate. That's reflected in the next 2 years by an additional rate increase in the order of 2%. That ensures that we're funding renewal spending through the operating budget. I'd be happy to take any questions, as I'm sure Mr. Spartellis would, in terms of the underpinning assumptions around those key financial indicators. I suspect the Lord Mayor would appreciate some statement from the Audit and Risk Committee regarding its endorsement or support of the appropriateness of those indicators over the term of the plan.
Yeah, that's true, but I'd also appreciate a reminder of the need for discipline, because all of this is about the other side of the argument is how much is being spent, and I just would value some independent advice generally. So I just think it's an important thing that this committee does.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Well, John, did you want to make any comments?
I think, there was quite a bit of discussion at our June workshop around a number of the assumptions, and I agree that debt was one of those areas that was discussed quite a bit, and what the actual debt was being applied and used against. I'd be happy if we made a minute in the recommendation for today around that, and something around something more around looking at continued focus on project prioritisation and affordability, and also long-term debt sustainability. That should be front and centre to future decision making. I'd be happy with something around that, because similar thoughts, because you can see the debt is continually rising for the first 9 of the 10 years, but as been outlined, what it's been allocated towards. So I'd be happy for something to be put into the minutes about that.
Thanks, John. Well, look, I'll make some comments. As the CEO has indicated, all the projected results for those 3 key financial indicators are within the range. I think for those of us who have been on the Audit and Risk Committee for a while, we understand some of the challenges. So one of the challenges is about being to raise the asset renewal effort up to 100%, and we can see that will happen from 2031-32. And also, we're aware we've got 3 very large renewal challenges ahead of us, and there's still a lot of work to be done on those. I think we're changing our view about how the WIR might be addressed, and there's some uncertainty around what the outcome will be for the bridge. So those 3 sort of key renewal projects are probably the main risks I see going forward, because they're just so large. And I think we can see that, our debt is peaking, around 34, 35 when those things sort of come to fruition, although we can see then that after that our debt does fall away, quite considerably. So, on the face of it, all the key indicators are within the target ranges, but I agree, there are some significant challenges ahead of the council in addressing those renewal projects, and also, as you rightly point out, there has to be a lot of discipline around this because there'll be another election next year, and if there's a significant changeover in the makeup of the council, the strategic direction may change. It might change, and that might put further pressure on the long-term financial plan. And of course, that's why we update it every year. Of course. So I'd be more than happy to maybe put a couple of things. Maybe the first one is to say that that all the three key financial indicators. I don't know whether you want to spell them out individually.
Right, so maybe
are within the target range, something around that.
1.1. Yeah, following. That the key financial indicators over the life of the plan are within appropriate target ranges. Don't let me put words in there.
So the second one, I think we just need to. So I think that's appropriate. The next one, we'd need to say something about the level of debt, because that's obviously a concern. So we might say that something around that, that the level of debt peaks. Well,
The thought I had there was it's reflective of the investment the council's making, and that's peak at a point in time if that persists, because that's the reason for the increase in debt is the underinvestment in previous years in the council. So I'm not sure if that gives some context.
I'll give it a go. At the level of debt, the level of borrowings, peaks in
34, 35. Third last one.
So it's 32, 33. Yeah, 32, 33.
No, it's it.
33, 34 that make.
So 215.9. If you go to the raw numbers, it's 215.9 at 34, 35. And maybe we could say something that, that's appropriate to.
And reflecting the necessary investment in significant renewals.
Yep.
Relating to Adelaide Bridge, Torrens Weir and Rundle U Park. And there's a 1.3, that the need for financial discipline over the life of the plan will be important to long-term financial sustainability.
Can I add to that one?
Yep.
In terms of, I think,
Trying to assist.
no, absolutely. I think with 1.3, I think I've just put some words down here in terms of continued focus on project prioritisation, affordability, and long-term debt sustainability. I think those three key things embodies in 1.3.
So you could continue on after that with those, be specific, including.
Including.
If you want to read them.
Oh, sure. Including project prioritisation, affordability, and long-term debt sustainability.
Long-term debt management.
Management, yep.
Yeah. Cool. Molly?
Thank you.
Without complicating it and dragging it out further, when we had our workshop with the committee recently on this, there was a suggestion from them that we should be targeting anywhere between 3 and 10% operating surplus. They thought that zero wasn't appropriate moving forward for our long-term sustainability. And I just wanted
1.4,
yeah.
subject to the audit committee supporting it. That council consider an amendment to the operating surplus ratio range from the current target to a revised target of 3 to 20%. So it's the bottom end, not the top.
That will frighten them.
Well, it was suggested. And this plan, apart from 26, 27, actually makes that target.
Thank you for that assistance. Members happy with that recommendation as it stands? Yes, John?
Probably just on 1.4, probably the high end of the target. I'm not sure 20% is a realistic target. So I'm not sure I'd want 1.4 from this committee to go to a higher range of 20%. I agree with the bottom end, like a break-even zero is not either an appropriate one, but the 20% range I don't think is a realistic one.
Through the presiding member, I would remind the audit committee members that the 0 to 20 range that is currently reflected in the papers is in fact the suggested range as a consequence of the LGA's work in long-term sustainability. So if you're going to reconsider the 20%, that would potentially be at a step with the current sector guidance.
Can I offer a suggestion so that people know where it's come from? It could say from 0 to 20 to 3 to 20, so people realise it's not a dramatic change. Would that help?
I guess from my point of view, it's the bottom end. So I guess if we don't change the top end, I think that's okay. But I think we all recognise that for the size of this council and future investment, we need to be targeting something more than zero in order to generate additional cash. So I think that's fine. Although I do, and I think this will be a discussion when we look at the long-term financial plan again, when we're looking at targets, is I'm always of a view we should try and set our ranges to reflect what we think is going to happen over the next 10 years. So I recognise there is guidance out there, but each council should set their own targets range. But I'm happy to recognise that we're really just adjusting the bottom part of the range. So that helps you, John.
It does, and look, I don't disagree, Michael, in terms of in terms of the target ranges from an industry. I'm just thinking more if we can word it so that if we're just adjusting maybe the bottom range of the target and not stating the top end.
If we can assist, Adelaide, target range from 0 to 20%. Delete the current target to a revised target. So percentage sign there and there.
Through the chair, just want to add as well that Mark and I have talked about with the next iteration of the long-term plan, we were going to look at some of these key financial indicators and particularly around the borrowings and KFIs to align them better. So whilst this is, I guess, a moment in time, moving forward with the next iteration of LTFP, we've given an undertaking to have a look at all of the key financial indicators moving forward.
Yes, Sam.
sorry, and everyone in this table might have covered this already before, but I was just wondering if the operating surplus ratio is sort of sitting around the 1s to sort of 4. We're suggesting we should lift the target to 3%. That might make it harder. So I was just curious about your sensitivity analysis that you did, because all of this is predicated on your assumptions, I guess, being true and accurate. So I just had a wondering if whether we needed to also maybe mention something about the confidence in your financial assumptions over the period.
Yeah. Look, through the chair, the key point I'll just make around the long-term financial plan, it is a projection based on our current level of assumptions, and it's basically is a guidance to council to allow them to understand what impacts their decisions may have on the longer term. The fact that we're actually achieving above 3% for the balance of the long-term financial plan gives me some confidence that there is some room there. Now, you know, in any given year there may be shocks and other things that are unforeseen, and we may drop below that 3%. The intent of the long-term financial plan is that there may be some years, like with our cash flow from operations, where we do dip down, but that doesn't mean that we're not sustainable over the 10 years. So I'm comfortable with our assumptions as they stand, and that we've got some buffer in there, notwithstanding that, you know, it's very difficult to predict the future at this point in time. So,
Thanks, Anthony. All right, so we have a recommendation. Would someone like to move that? Thanks, John. Seconded by Sam. All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you very much. Now, do we have video here? Okay, so we'll move back now to back to the start of the agenda. So back to the start of the reports, I think. 6.1. So we've got some representatives from BDO here. So this one is the Strategic Internal Audit Plan.
thank you. Through the chair, those who were here may recall that our first internal audit plan was presented to Audit and Risk Committee in November 25. This is in effect an annual and in brackets rolling update to ensure that the plan continues to address any emerging needs or any other factors that arise. We have flagged previously that the strategic risk work that's being undertaken, which is also presented in this meeting, may influence the plan moving forward as well, as we identified matters through that process. Also want to note that the internal audits, they are a combination undertaken in-house by BDO as our partner, who we've identified to undertake 2 per quarter for the coming year, and any specialist providers that we may need, particularly around cybersecurity and those types of specialist audits. The timing of the timing of the new council has also influenced to some degree the proposed audit. It would be more appropriate to do some of these once the new council's on, but notwithstanding that, the change in the timing of the 2027 general election has also meant that we've had to move some of these to accommodate that as well. Effectively now, we've got Peter here to respond to any questions that you may have, but we're seeking your feedback and input.
Did you want to make any comments?
I should know this by now, I'm sorry. I apologise for me being late earlier. No, not much to add to that, other than we did go through a robust process with management last year when we came on board. And some of this timing is probably a little bit ambitious given that we're already in Q1, but we are making substantial progress tidying up the internal audits that are on the FY26 plan. And part of the reason is I think people are aware that we are in that position is that we're only able to really commence work November, December last year because of our conflict with respect to the external audit. So all internal audits on the FY26 plan are in progress. 5 of them are at draft report stage. One of them is substantially complete with field work, so we're quite close to having a number of reports ready to start shooting up to committee, and there's obviously the one that's being presented today on the risk analysis that's been done. So,
Thank you. Any comments from members? Yes.
Sorry, just maybe another question that everyone knows, but just for clarity, if that's okay. Through the chair, yeah. I noticed that your plan goes out to like financial year 29, and I was just curious how you manage, I don't know, if something changes in your strategic environment, and how do you reprioritise, and how does, I guess, that flow up to this committee, if that's okay?
Within the council, we have a committee called the Strategic Risk and Internal Audit Committee. And so if we have any material changes or any emerging issues, that committee will consider those. They will discuss that with BDO as well. And given it's a rolling plan, we can amend that plan. We'll bring that back to the audit and risk for your knowledge as well. But we do review that annually.
Yes, Councillor Giles.
Just off the back of what Sam was saying, that's a rolling review. But what about? I'm just trying to think about how we're addressing the risk attached to, for example, state government announcements about changes to the use of our parklands and the insecurity around what that might mean and the lack of information, that sort of stuff. That, like, things that come in very quickly without our planning. And is there any process where the risk is looked at quickly in relation to those items?
So not probably from an internal audit perspective itself, but certainly that is an option for us if required. But going back to the Strategic Risk and Internal Audit Committee that meets monthly, and part of that committee we consider emerging risks and discuss those at length, and then if we feel that we need to consider those more in depth at that point as part of that committee's consideration, we can either bring those to the ARC, or we can discuss that and take that to BDO, or do our own internal in-house audit as well.
And quickly to just add to what Bex mentioned there, we are doing currently a internal audit that is focused on strategic stakeholder management. So one of the elements of that internal audit is to assess, I suppose, council structures to understand what its stakeholder universe looks like, including state government and federal government and other dimensions of other types of stakeholders that exist. And part of that is looking at the council's, I suppose, processes and systems to ensure that it understands its views of its stakeholders in which it deals with, that it's got a consistent approach to ensuring that there's, I suppose, the right level of communication with those stakeholders, the capture of that information when they do get engaged. And some of it probably, that report will hopefully at this point be presented. I think we're looking at October. Yes, yeah. So that might have some information in there that could help to address what you've just asked.
I just had a couple of questions. So has there been any change to what's proposed for this financial year compared to what was in the plan that we adopted last time?
There were some changes, and that's because, and this probably helps to answer maybe one of your questions that you had before. We maintain a forward plan of a 3-year forward plan, and that's got about 50 or 60 projects on there. It's got quite a few projects on there. And it's not only for the 3 years, there's also reserve projects on that list that we discuss. And I suppose that does change as we engage with management on that annual basis to sort of calibrate it. So we look at, with management, we look at the full list. And we also look at, and I suppose the other implication is this risk work that we've just done. We never had that previously as we were going through the internal audit planning process. And I only think that can supplement and add to the planning process. So the answer is yes. When we calibrate the plan on an annual basis, we do rejig what the forward plan looked like. This year we did stick to the plan that we had proposed. So for FY26 we haven't changed anything since approval from both Shreya and this committee. But I expect that next year, now that we're armed with this additional risk information, it will probably be a more comprehensive process to consider that and to consider how we might scope in that information to doing our internal audits. And I can speak about that a little bit later when we get to the risk report.
So you're saying that the 26-27, that may change based on what you've received, you know now?
It shouldn't, but there probably is we do have to be dynamic. And given that we've now produced this report, there is and it's freshly produced, it's only been produced over the last week or two in final form, but there is, as we've suggested in the report, an opportunity now to consider the plan and whether it does need to change. But we haven't yet fully gone through that analysis.
Yes. Can I just ask if anyone's ever done an internal audit of the number of plans we've got? Because we have so many and they're honoured in the breach, and it brings me to the business plan and budget. I think it's very efficient because people own the plan. There are people who own each plan, and there are hundreds of them. And when it comes to budgeting, they're all given a salami slice. And so the impact is insignificant. Nothing ever happens because everyone just gets, a little bit. And so it's very efficient, but it's not very satisfying. And I think the first one, the business plan and budget, is probably one of the critical issues because there's no visibility to anything happening because we do a little bit everywhere. There's no wow and bang pop about it. And so I think that one, when talking about effectiveness and efficiency, is actually masking something more critical that we're not actually looking at. Though we are having an independent review of the budgeting, the most efficient way to run the budgeting is to not let the council elected members near it. And I know that's what people would like to do, but it isn't what the board want.
Yeah.
So I think that's an issue that I'd like to delve into because efficiency is not the only benchmark. And I would love to have a review of the plans and get rid of at least 2/3 of them.
Through the presiding member, I think the Lord Mayor's comments are well made, and we can certainly work with BDO to ensure that the scope of the business plan and budget review addresses consideration of the appropriateness of the current plans and strategies that are on the books, and perhaps make some recommendations around how the right strategies in plans can be appropriately funded.
We have an audit coming up through the chair. There's an audit that's in draft mode at the moment, which looks at our whole corporate planning and reporting process and how the plans integrate or not, and then how we actually ensure that they are costed appropriately. And so that will be coming to the committee in the next month or two, I think. Yeah.
Yes, Councillor Jones.
I'd just like to reinforce what the Lord Mayor has said. So that sort of discussion needs to actually look at our strategic plan and what our priorities are, and whether the plans and the actions attached to the myriad of plans actually are meeting the strategic objectives of the strategic plan, which is set only every 4 years. I think that would be a really useful thing to do, rather than just focus on how many plans we've got and which ones should we get rid of, but it actually really put it in that context so that we can actually reinforce and solidify a strategic approach, because sometimes that's the problem as well with let's do this, let's do that, and everyone just does a strategic plan, puts it on a shelf and forgets that that's what we're actually working to. So that's the only thing I'd add to that commentary. And I'm happy to move that if it needs to be moved about that work, or we just take it as read that it will happen.
Okay, and look, I might just make some comments about having worked in local government for a long time. My observation is that over time we adopt lots of plans and strategies, and we end up with a sort of proliferation of plans and strategies. And I was always of the mind that every time we have a general election and we do our new strategic community plan, we should say, well, let's do a stock take and say, well, are all these still relevant? Because I remember when I was CEO of a council, it was one of the first things I did. We had 3 versions of the same plans, and plans that hadn't been touched for many years. So, and I think at the end of the day, we do a lot of work to develop plans, and often we engage the community and we raise expectations, but ultimately if we don't deliver them or we can't afford them, well then we're sort of letting the community down. So if we're going to have plans, we need to make sure they're affordable. So I think that's a really good start probably to sort of start that process. But I'm always for doing stock takes of plans every 4 years after a general election, and just really be focused on what we can deliver. Back to my earlier questioning, one of the things I guess I feel like that, as the Audit and Risk Committee, we haven't sort of been engaged in like the development of the plan. So when the last plan came, it was a bit like this. It was just sort of delivered to us, and I did ask the question about the 50 or 60 projects. Can we see the internal audit universe? And you said, oh well, yes, we have got that. So, we're being asked to make a recommendation about. Well, we're just sort of noting it, I guess, but I can't really sort of put my hand on my heart and say, well, this is what I think should be done, because I haven't been privy to any of the work that's happened within the administration. So I guess, I trust what you've brought to us, but I think we should sort of find a way of how the Audit and Risk Committee can be more involved in that lead-up process, even if it's just bringing a report and saying, hey, we've done a review, here's the 50 or 60 projects, they're out there, and we've changed these around, and get some input from us, because I can't, it's very hard to make any comment about that. So I think it would be good to have a think about how this committee could be more involved in the development, of this plan, because it's important, and it's a bit of a moving feast, as we can see.
Yeah, through the chair, acknowledge the comments. This does get workshopped through our Sharia committee. I don't see why we couldn't actually then have a workshop, I guess, with the Audit and Risk Committee once we've had an opportunity to do that. So can I take that on notice and work with the team to understand when an appropriate time might be to do that, even if it's in the next couple of meetings, to help reshape this if the committee feels it needs to.
Yes, John.
Just probably in the spirit of what you just mentioned, Mark, about engagement with this committee across, and I'll pick on the business plan and budget one. In terms of engagement process with council and budget planning and management, does that also then include this Audit and Risk Committee in terms of our role with those strategic plans and also the budget, and as we saw before, the LTFP discussion? Is there, and sorry, I'm still calling you in some respects to this area, do we get involved at all as the chair, get engaged to provide feedback as part of the internal audit work or the scope of that work?
For that specific audit, we haven't yet scoped it up. So the process would be that we would engage with the executive and management to draft up the scope. And that the scope then might include within the scope to go and engage with the various committees if that is going to be what is desired. Once that occurs, it goes through SRIA, Strategic Risk and Internal Audit, which is an executive committee, who have the opportunity to review the scope and provide input at that point, and we often make amendments from that discussion, and then it goes to this committee for noting and approval. So there's another opportunity at that point to provide commentary on the scope and feedback on it so that we can adjust our approach if needed.
Through the chair, what I'm hearing is that you're looking for some way to get some comfort around your ability to, I guess, influence or make informed commentary.
Through the presiding member, if you'll forgive a comment, and my reflection on the conversation regarding this item this morning is that we as an administration haven't necessarily done ourselves justice in terms of contextualising the plan that's been presented. I'd make the point that there is, and it's been referred to, an endorsed internal audit plan 25-26, which was one of the first pieces of work that BDO did when they came on board, and we've heard from BDO this morning about the progress of the reviews that form part of that plan. So I think it's important to recognise that this is not something that's come out of thin air. It's been heavily based on the work that was committed to around the 25-26 plan. For a variety of reasons, the Audit Committee, with the exception of item 6.4 in this agenda, haven't seen the final reports, it's just unfortunate that we don't note and recognise that in this report. So there was an initial internal audit plan that was socialised with the Audit and Risk Committee. That's a matter of record. The program was endorsed by the committee. You haven't yet seen the output of that plan. This is the next stage of work. I'm not diminishing in any way the appropriateness of engagement with the Audit and Risk Committee regarding revisions to the plan, but I think there's a bit of context that hasn't been provided around this report, and I think that might have been helpful.
Yeah, I guess I'm not questioning the work that's been done behind the scenes. I just feel that this has come to us. We've seen this is the first time we've seen it. A lot of work's been done, and I guess I'm just asking, how can we find a way for this committee to be part of that process, which might be once you've done your review, we have a workshop and we talk about what's come out of the review, what things you're recommending to change, and then that way we can have sort of more input. But I just find it very difficult to have any input to here. I'm happy to recommend and we go forward, but I guess it's just about how can we find a better way to engage the committee. That's it. Yeah.
Okay. So through the presiding member, absolutely prepared to commit to an interim step between the deliberations of executive and internal audit prior to bringing a recommendation around the next plan. So part of the feedback was the following feedback.
Administration.
Request administration. To introduce a workshop process with the Audit and Risk Committee to
see it similar to what we do with the long-term financial plan. There's a lot to get through, and the workshop is the most appropriate sort of mechanism for that. And then we see the results of that today, in the final report. So I think that's appropriate. All right, we have a recommendation. Would someone like to move that? Councillor Giles, seconded by Sam. All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you. We'll move on to 6.2, which is the internal audit scope. Strategic alignment of our corporation. Anthony, did you want to?
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, in line with seeking committee's feedback and review of the internal audit scopes, we're presenting the social media management scope today. I guess with an ever-increasing growth in social media interactions and the potential impacts of managing content effectively, it's timely to review our approach to managing third-party comments on our platforms and open it up to your questions and seeking your feedback.
Questions? Very interesting topic.
I think it was very interesting. And just, I guess, for information, how far back, as part of your testing, how far back, what's kind of within your scope? What's the time frame that you're looking at from a compliance and testing point of view?
Yeah, it's not. It's more focus on design effectiveness. Council does have a reasonably complex social media presence through some of its subsidiaries, so ACMA, AIDA, Parklands Management Authority and Caterpillar. And so what this is, there was a case a couple of years ago against Fairfax, and what was established in that case was that Fairfax was, and I'm not a lawyer, so I'll disclose that, but Fairfax was held, I suppose, liable, well, they were sued for defamation by someone. They'd made a post about someone, and there were comments in the third-party comments beneath the post that allowed that person to be identified. And so he was able to sue Fairfax for defamation, and he was successful in doing so. And so I suppose, the City of Adelaide, drastically different organisation to a media beast like Fairfax, but I suppose what that did was identify a want to look at how City of Adelaide looked at and moderated, particularly the third-party comments that were being made on its posts. So what this has done is it's looked at, I suppose, firstly, it's been a risk-based internal audit. So what we're doing is we're looking at the social media presence of City of Adelaide and the nature of the posts that are being made, and then we're going through the process for each of those different media channels in which it posts through. So understanding what the process is for curating content, reviewing that content, approving that content to ensure that that is aligned with City of Adelaide's expectations around what can be posted, and then looking at the process for making the posts and reviewing the comments that are made against the post to ensure that they meet, I suppose, again, Adelaide City's expectation about what is appropriate or not, and then looking at how, I suppose, the archiving and closure of those posts. So when do we close off when people are able to comment? But really how it came about and why it came about was due to this case against Fairfax Media, and I suppose it was a bit of we should make sure that we're looking at that and we're in control of it. So that's the extent of the scope and how we're going about it. But it's fair to say that we have done some sample testing. The sample testing we've done has only probably gone back 6 months, but it's more about the process and the systems that council use to ensure that all of this is in order across all of the different channels and all of the different subsidiaries, etc., that are making those posts.
And just as a follow-up, And because it is a very complex area, I appreciate that. And so my question about, you know, especially the testing around some of that legislative areas, is that something that BDO internally have already got you're using someone internally, or is it someone, do you have to get any external because of the particular nature of it in terms of from a compliance or best practice point of view?
Outside of things like the Privacy Act, and there isn't a whole lot of legislation that tells you how you're supposed to make and moderate your social media presence. So there's case law. We've managed it internally. We've got, and again, it is a bit of a niche area, I suppose, but we've managed it internally. We've got a couple of staff members that do hold legal qualifications, etc., that are quite handy in cases like this. But again, I mean, there isn't a Fairfax, completely different organisation, council, and the nature of their posts. They're not making, council's not making posts that about people that are going through legal proceedings and those sorts of things. So it's completely different, I suppose, risk profile. But we've taken that into consideration. But no, we're doing it in-house. Yeah.
Yes, Lord Mayor.
So we did have a training program here for councillors, and a lawyer who was quite a black letter lawyer was telling us what we couldn't do. And one of the things they did say that we should never do is recommend a business, which I promptly ignored, because I go to coffee shops and restaurants and shops and say, new shops opened, go there. I mean, I think that's my job. So there is a conflict in the legal advice and the way we operate, or I operate. So there are, but we do have the documentation from the legal advice that maybe should be passed over to you. They had a slide set.
Yes, well, legal advice is always advice, and it's up to the council to decide whether it wants to take it or wants to accept it all or accept some. And I guess that'll be the outcome of this review, is about the appropriateness of the policies and all that you've got. We also be looking at, it'd be interesting to know how many, all the different platforms that council uses, and so there might be recommendations about we've got too many or that sort of thing.
Certainly. So one of the things that we think that this review is just as much about providing information back to the committee and the executive about its presence and its risk profile, as much as it is making recommendations about the underlying processes. So certainly when we come back, we can provide an overview of the social media presence, the different platforms, the nature of the posts based on the conversations and the research that we've done, that each of the subsidiaries through their respective, and council operations through their respective media platforms, social media platforms are making. So we will be able to provide that view.
Through the presiding member, I might just add, this is not an area where we're starting with a blank sheet of paper. The council executive receives a quarterly report regarding our media presence, and that's, I make the point, it's a quarterly report. The most recent Q4 report for the last financial year was received in the last 2 weeks. So at an executive level, there is a clear understanding of the channels we have in place, the traffic through those channels, and the improvement activities that are in place regarding ensuring that we have a contemporary website and contemporary social media channels. So we'll feed all that in as part of the review, but I just want to assure the committee that this is not a matter that we're blind to.
Understood. I think we're all looking forward to the report, the review. The other thing, just as an aside, there's quite a large number of internal audit reviews proposed, both by BDO and the organisation, and so they're not always going to, the scopes are not always going to line up with our meetings. So I've suggested that we'd be happy to consider them out of session, just for the efficiency. You've got a lot to do, so you know, where it doesn't line up with a meeting, we're more than happy to deal with them out of session. All right, well, we have a recommendation. Would someone like to move that? John, seconded by Councillor Giles. All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you. We'll move on to 6.4 now, which is the Strategic Risk Assessment and Alignment Report. Anthony.
Thank you. Thank you, through the Chair. This report is largely based on the revised Strategic Risk Register format that was previously presented and endorsed by Audit and Risk Committee. And what it did, it then culminated in BDO undertaking a bow tie analysis that they had proposed at the time. So what this work has done, it's identified the causal factors of risk, it's identified controls currently in place and proposed treatments to manage these risks, and it's also assigned the risk to particular owners. I guess note that the risk ratings align to a predominant factor, so there are 5 consequence factors that we look at. The assessment has been done against the one that aligns best, we think, to that risk rather than to all of them. It's difficult to align it to all of them. Notwithstanding that, like I said, some risks impact more than one of those consequences. The findings, as presented, they gave rise to some further work that we've identified. That'll be, again, when the next council comes on board, is to understand the council's risk appetite and how this may inform, I guess, an update to our risk matrix settings as well. So we've used the current understanding of risk appetite and the current risk matrix settings. So that's a further step on our road, I think, to a more mature risk management approach moving forward. But happy now to open up to ourselves and BDO if you have any questions or feedback.
Questions?
So findings 1, 2 and 3, I believe are being done concurrently. And then the way I see it, the internal audit plan or program, like we were discussing in the previous item, will then be updated accordingly with that. So I think in light of the discussions from before about engagement around that, I think it's a good opportunity to kind of tie that all together with this committee. So yeah, I just think based on those discussions, it's a really good opportunity for that. At the timeframes, are they noting all the other workload and other internal audits? Are those timeframes that have been set like achievable? Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions? I just had a comment following on from Anthony, and that is, I think the next step is to update the council's risk appetite. For example, we don't, even though we've got residual risk ratings of high, moderate, we don't know whether that's appropriate or not. So the next step is to say, well, actually for financial sustainability, we can't actually reduce that below high because that's a state of play, and then our risk appetite will say, well, that's appropriate. And the other thing that helps too is that, there's 14 treatment plans for item 1. Maybe we don't need to be doing all of those. So I guess it helps inform the number of treatment plans we do. So if it's in line with our risk appetite, well, we don't need to do any more treatment. We just have to monitor the risk. So I guess it makes it a more efficient use of staff resources as well. So I look forward to that piece of work being done. All right, we have a recommendation there. Would someone like to move that? John, seconded by Sam. All those in favour? That's carried. All right, I think we can let BDO go now. I think they've sort of done a good job today. Thank you very much for all those reports. That's fantastic. Okay, we look forward to it. The next item is 6.5, which is the presiding member's annual report. I don't propose to say that I've had a lot of input to that because I've only become the presiding member, but I have reviewed it and it is factually correct. Again, one of the things that Anthony and I talked about was for next year's presiding, that he and I will work together and maybe review the construction report, but also for other councils on presiding, I do actually like to go along to a council meeting and actually present the report, just to try and, I guess, raise the profile of the committee and I guess just build a bit more trust around all that. And we've heard today from the Lord Mayor and Councillor Giles looking for more input from us on the first item. And I found, I sit on city only and I get a lot of questions about, how can we work sort of closely with the council, recognising that we do have this sort of independent position. So yeah, I think we'll work towards that sort of next year. So as I said, it's a factual report. Would someone like to move the recommendation?
Actually, Mark, can I just-
Yeah, absolutely.
From our last meeting, I think we're going to, hopefully this meeting, also minute or note, vote thanks to Nicole and for Matthew for their service. I don't think we did it at the last meeting, so whether it's at this point in this or just somewhere in this meeting, I thought it'd be a good opportunity to do so.
That's probably appropriate. After any report, I guess, whether we other business.
On other business? Yeah, I just thought,
Yeah, no,
done.
sorry, my mission. Yes, absolutely, we should do that. So we'll do that in other business. So would someone like to move this report? Thank you, John. Seconded by Councillor Giles. All those in favour? That's carried. So we have a confidential report. So we have to
Move into conference.
back into other business. Yes, okay, we can finish with the confidential. Are we happy to move to other business? Happy to.
You're looking for a resolution?
Sorry. Yes, I just thought it'd be appropriate just to note
I'll
it
give
there.
you a correct and take input as we go along.
Please do.
That the Audit and Risk Committee notes the recent resignation of the former presiding member, Nicole Friends.
That's the resignation.
Notes the resignation of the former presiding member of the City of Adelaide Audit and Risk Committee and expresses its appreciation for the direction, guidance and support provided by Ms. Rattan, just RR will be Ms. RR, during her tenure as presiding member.
And Matthew will.
That would be a second?
Yep.
Yep, that'll be two. So have I captured the intent?
Absolutely, thank you.
The Audit Risk Committee notes the resignation of Mr. Matthew Fletcher and expresses its appreciation for the contribution, his contribution, for his contribution, sorry, contribution during his tenure as an independent member of the
So just need to take out Audit and Risk Committee working on that. Just start with notes. You'd like to move that, John?
Yes.
It's your idea, thank you.
No, thank you for your assistance. Greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, fantastic. And seconder, Councillor Giles, all those in favour? That's carried. All right, we have to exclude the public, so we have a recommendation there to exclude the public to consider a confidential item. I won't read out the grounds. Would someone like to move that we move into that? Councillor Giles, seconded by John, all those in favour? That's carried. Lock the door.